Investment should not come as another gift away to us just because you have no use to your equipment, and Africa becomes a necessary dumping ground for that.
Due to problems of skill and inefficient communications of the opportunities within the industry, investments remain very low indeed.
I own a media company, but produce my commercials in Kenya because one, quality is higher and it's cheaper.
When you talk about our business press, what exactly does the business press focus on?
If your business has the strength in its shoulders to support those expectations and you have the level of transparency, trust me, there's more than enough capital that's going to flow here.
If we don't make those tough decisions, we will have this conversation again in 10 years.
You brought up some of the issues that actually came up yesterday and was discussed in depth, but will still benefit from your input greatly indeed. First question is that you mentioned the licensing, the giving out of licensing, what's it called? The licensing permits. And one of the issues that came up yesterday when talking about the business of media was there was a participant, Mr. Edward Watson, who raised the issue that, you know, maybe considering the size of our markets, we have too many radio stations and too many TV stations, and that can affect the business of media, whether we need to pay attention to content that is developed in the country. So for instance, there used to be the practice where the understanding was you have, as a content provider, TV station or radio, about 60% of your content has to be in Ghana. Now the proposal is that it should be a considerable amount. Now what is a considerable amount? That is subject to a lot of interpretations, and we think that, or the conversation was that that might affect negatively the business of media in the country.
Yeah, thank you. Licenses of television and radio. Like I indicated earlier, we have a very liberalized democratic regime. And fundamental human rights are built on the foundation of freedom of expression and the independence and freedom of the media. These are not freedoms or rights that any government must be encouraged to curtail. And therefore, it will be difficult for us to want to impose limitations. The only thing we can do is to raise the technical bar so that we don't have mushroom FM stations which are not delivering. But if you come to the core activity, we want the radio and television to educate and to entertain. So long as you are able to do that, and you meet certain basic technical requirements, you should be free to operate in Ghana. And let me share a very interesting experience with you. Maybe I was pretty young, I don't know your age, but there were times in Ghana where it took just an announcement at the radio station for governments to be changed. Now that absolutely was respect of the sovereign rights of the people. Today, I'm not too sure that any misguided soldier man who goes to one of these FM stations can declare that by this action, I'm the president of the republic. So there is good reason why you must have a proliferation of the mass media. And it is not something that this government would want to check, except to say that let's do it to standards, let's do it to technical specifications, and let's do it in a manner which responds to this issue. Now, on broadcaster bill and content, yes, you have an issue. As a Ghanaian, I'm concerned about the debasing of our own moral values and what somebody calls the westernization of our culture. I think that our Ghanaian culture is decent and good, and if we can maintain it, why not? Now, but the tendency is that you have a society where even your own children are more interested in these Western issues than wanting to be Ghanaian. That becomes largely a problem of the breakdown of basic family structures. And you may not want to blame this on government. We, as a society, must decide what we want to do. But I essentially agree with you. I won't support a legislation which says considerable. That's ambiguous and that's vague. So when we get there, we'll give a definition to considerable. Maybe reasonable, but reasonable is always defined in legislation. But it means that substantial. We will have to insist on that. But I'm not too sure. When we get to fine-tuning any bill, we should be able to respond to that. So I don't think that the number of radio television stations should be a worry. It depends upon your content and how attractive you are. I think that our problem again is that too many of them are concentrating in Accra, Kumasi. You see, unattractive. Rural Ghana is not attractive to them. So if you have a television station, just yesterday somebody was telling me he wants to go to Morley Game Reserve to do a dedicated animal something on television. Very creative and innovative idea. I hope that he gets the kind of support that he wants to be able to do such a thing. But restrictions on number of radio stations and televisions, for the time being that I am where I am, I would not encourage any government to go that way. It is in our collective good as a country that people must freely express themselves. I will encourage our foreign participants, when it's 6 o'clock, try and listen to Ghanaian news. And you would love the beauty of our Ghanaian sense of humor in terms of their participation to the politics of Ghana. You may take some of the comments for granted, but it's always a useful guide to listen to people as to what they feel about a particular government policy or intervention. And it gives you an opportunity to fine-tune policy. So you just don't dismiss outright. And you see, level of participation. Every radio station is running its own program. Different categories of people depending upon which radio station controls which specific group of people. Like when it comes to local language, a particular FM station is popular. When it comes to credibility of news, particular FM stations is noted. I'm here to see an FM station which specializes on gender and are able to promote women rights or human rights if there were any and there was a distinction. So I'm sure I've attempted to deal with your first question. Yeah.
Yesterday, a judge was tracing the origins of CNN. You see, largely had a lot of American government backing. The BBC World Service is financed by the British Foreign Service. You can name several of them. And I'm happy you were talking about culture and people's psyche. Apart from the general breakdown of the family values and so on, one of the key things that has led to the westernization and the blanket culturation of our people is that all the things we see are foreign, Western, and so on. Yes, I was saying some of us who were fortunate during our time, it was reading first. TV wasn't so common. So reading gives you a certain broader perspective. But with TV, if it's slanted and that's all you see, then your mind is made. And it has gone on for so long. So that's why we say content, local content is very important. But I'm also a businessman. I don't even believe that it's just good for culture and for national identity and all that. It's big business. We know Hollywood. Recently, if you watch the TV stations, you see a lot of work coming from Kumasi. The grade may not be very good, but it's so exciting. And they are making lots of money. They are generating employment. People are being gameful. And very soon to be exported. Some things have been exported already. So it's big business. And we need support. We don't say just give us anything for free. But we need support if a special fund can be created, if in the legislation or the bill that's out there now, as you're saying, the business aspects are clearly defined so that we have a little advantage. Like, for instance, in Nigeria, the prime time is allocated to local content only. It's true, freedom, everybody can have everything, but the prime time is for Nigerian products alone. So that gives you an advantage. Same in South Africa and several other places. Okay, so that we help this infantile industry to grow since we think it's so strategic. So I'm sounding you out that we'll be coming. We've been advised to develop a white paper of sort, and that it will straddle the Trade, Communications and Information Ministry. So we are sounding you out that you will get your copy soon. And we hope that you help us in the endeavor. Thank you.
It's noted. Yours is more of an advice than me to want to respond. But just to assure you, I'm aware that government has given policy approval for a local content bill to be prepared. And that is being worked out between the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the Ministry of Energy. But maybe we have to expand the frontiers of that bill. You see, initially, as we found oil, everybody's eyes were on oil and gas. The bill that I have spotted was narrowed to that particular sector, and we've given approval for it to be further developed. I will share a personal frustration with you. I gave out two directives. One was that I said that, look, mobile phone companies, all of them largely foreign owned, thanks to our own lack of strategic investment as a country. When you wake up in the morning and you are complaining about the cedi not having value against the dollar, it's because profits must be repatriated in hard foreign currency. Now, I gave a request that scratch cards, just mobile scratch card, what you use to load your phone, should be printed locally. One of the companies had the impudence to write to me to ask that my action was not backed by law. Again, we had what we call infrastructure licenses of mobile companies. All of them are selling their towers. I again said that 30% should be reserved for Ghanaians. In doing this, let me also tell you that our problem again is capacity. MTN, the infrastructure is worth $400 million US. 30% of $400 million US. I haven't seen a Ghanaian businessman who can raise that. So genuinely in my heart, I want to do local content. I want to help indigenization. But there are fundamental hitches to the attainment of that core objective that I cannot do much about it. Again, we had what we call infrastructure licenses of mobile companies. All of them are selling their towers. I again said that 30% should be reserved for Ghanaians. In doing this, let me also tell you that our problem again is capacity. MTN, the infrastructure is worth $400 million US. 30% of $400 million US. I haven't seen a Ghanaian businessman who can raise that. So genuinely in my heart, I want to do local content. I want to help indigenization. But there are fundamental hitches to the attainment of that core objective that I cannot do much about it. Even the scratch card capacity, there were just only 2-3 companies in Ghana who had the capacity to print the kind of volumes and quality that they needed. So basic, I think that we must also be looking at the capacity of all your media stakeholders. What is their genuine capacity? For instance, every morning that I'm going to Tamale, I see one of the newspapers struggle to go and put even graphic. As at this morning, it's not yet in Tamale, it's not yet in Bolga, it's not yet in Wa. It's capacity. How is the printing done? In order that you can pick up everywhere in Ghana to have access. So I would rather just take yours as an advice than to want to respond to it.
Honorable, I'll be brief because I think you partly answered the question I had. The fundamental capacity when we start talking about local content. We've bemoaned the disadvantages of having a very large foreign content, and I agree perfectly with all the arguments that have gone there. But what are we replacing this with in terms of expertise, in terms of the content, in terms of the quality, and even in terms of, for want of a better word, censorship? Because even for what we see, there should be something in place. Those of us who are bemoaning the negative cultures, there should be a structure in place to censor or to vet some of these things. But we don't seem to see that working, and all sorts of bizarre things are shown. So I think you have answered the question on that capacity, but just to re-emphasize it. Thank you very much.
In terms of, I got the tail end of your presentation, and in terms of your openness to the digitization process that's ongoing, would you be open to, let's assume hypothetically, there was a bilateral partner who wanted to take a private-public partnership approach and have therefore approached commercial companies to act on their behalf, who have, let's say, all the resources required to create a turnkey facility here in Ghana, right? And money is not an objective. the first question, would you be open to such an intervention? Secondly, how does one go about it? Because that opportunity, hypothetically, is an immediate one. It's not in the distant future. It's immediate. If hypothetically one can get a very definitive subject to answer, I'm sure in the next 2 weeks it's possible to facilitate a visit by certain bilateral partners. Number 3, in terms of content, since you're going to invest in media, would you be open to a tax break-driven approach to creating an investment and enabling environment for the local media, in the sense that there are a lot of multinational companies making huge sums of money in this country who are taxed. But if there's a tax incentive whereby they may have certain tax exemptions, should they invest in media? Would that be an approach you'd entertain? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll take it from the tax. And to say that I happen to be a member of parliament, and one of the lessons I've learned, to make a confession, is that I hardly will raise objection to any initiative by government on taxes. It's a personal decision. To the extent that it's for the larger good, my inclination will be to support government to raise as much revenue as possible, provided it's utilized well. Now, tax incentives, yes, they exist. That's why we have the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. We have the Free Zones Board, which are all clothed with some mandate to waive some taxes. So if you are clear with the mandate of what you want to do, we may be able to support you in a particular industry. Now, 10 key on digital migration. I am subject to the laws of Ghana, and there is a public procurement law of Ghana. To the extent that any entity can demonstrate technical and financial capacity and subject itself to those laws,